Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Don't miss out on our comic book creator interviews, including our monthly Chichester chats with comic book legend DG Chichester, superhero movie brackets in our search for the worst comic book movie of all time, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/CapesandLunatics. Hope to see you there.
Avast me, hearties, and welcome once again to Full Stream Ahead. I be your Captain Charlie, the Professor Esther, and with me as always is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. Mozz, in a world of capes and lunatics, of gods and monsters themselves, there is a place called India, which will soon be Pakistan. And that is where Ms. Marvel finds herself today. Time and time again, Season 1, Episode 5 of Ms. Marvel, the Bengal reveals to Kamala secrets about her family lineage, as well as the truth behind the veil. Our director this week, of course, is Sharmeen Obiad Chinoy, along with, of course, Fatima Ashkar and Bisha K. Ali, who get our credit for television credits on this one. Will Dunn and Sophie Miller are our story editors. G. Willow Wilson and Adrian Elfona get those Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan created by credits. And hardest working people this week are Aisha Bori and Kate Gritman, our staff writers. Man, so Mozz, we open up in the past. We've gone back in time, as if time itself were a flat circle. Which is what's interesting because, man, here's the thing. Here's the thing about all of the MCU. All of the writers say, look, man, they don't tell us what to do. But I get the feeling they tell them when to not do something. And I think, I mean that time travel is always allowable within the flat circle. So in this situation, Kamala Khan goes back to fulfill her family's history. You know, what appears as destiny is in fact what occurs. But, you know, within that infinite timeline of infinite possibilities, there may have been incursions that occurred. And this I think, is the real complexity of maintenance on the timeline. Is every time someone goes back, that is a lot of incursions that all have to be corrected right away. Because what needs to happen is to get to the Kang dynasty, obviously.
If you look at like time flowing like a river or something, right? You block it or you try to alter its path, as so many people have done. That energy still needs to flow somewhere. So new tributaries form to compensate for the pressure that's being held back by people not letting things happen as they ought to have, right? Mm-hmm. So if you think about it from that perspective, other things need to happen to compensate. So maybe those situations cause these time loops. And that's the only way that the AI can sort through the data stream. It needs to create a little time loop to compensate for all the excursions. So maybe that's what causes things like this to happen.
And, you know, and that works too. And it is interesting when you think about the concept of, you know, for all the things that happen, if Kamala was not there, if Kamala did not travel back in time, her family might not exist and she might not be born. And it's a reverse grandfather paradox where she is in fact her own grandpa in this, as it were. She causes her continued family existence. So it's interesting. Although there is a secondary argument that says that that child would have grown up regardless, would have then passed on her genetics, would have then established a variant of Kamala at some point in time who might well have found the bangle. So there's lots of possibilities that exist.
And even if she didn't find the bangles, something else could have happened that could have triggered her genes to turn on.
Exactly, because as we learn at the very end of another episode, so we won't talk about it now.
Right, sorry.
But, I caught myself. Almost did.
No.
But, anyway, although I will say this, and this I think is the most interesting aspect, when we see Kamala's mother cook food at an insanely fast pace, you realize that, that is her Nor DNA. That is her gin, that when she's doing a domestic task, she can do it much faster than a normal human being because that's her fairy power, as it were. If you know fairies, you know that's how they cobble the shoes in one night because they have the fairy power.
Gotcha.
And so clearly Kamala's mother does have some fairy power within her, and that's how she can just put all the food together in one moment because that's how her power is expressed.
Either that or she's just awesome, you know? I mean, like...
It could be that she's just planned ahead and she just always had the food ready to go. She knew he would be there. She knew what was going to do. But then maybe her power is just awesome planning abilities. You know, because that's the thing. It's like either she did it, put it all together really fast, or she just had everything ready to go by the time he got there. Yeah. So it's like one or the other. One of those things is clearly a superpower.
Either way, true.
We should accept that and respect that. I liked Kamala meeting her great-grandmother. That was sweet. Especially because it seemed like she understood who Kamala was in that moment. You know?
Right.
It's like, and which suggests, I mean, this is the thing, is like, on my rewatch of this, I'm getting so many thoughts about the future of the MCU that are being layered into this. Like the fact that, like, so here's my crazy fan theory number one, Mozz. Are you ready for this?
Okay.
The Nor dimension actually is the negative zone.
What's the negative zone?
The negative zone is the antimatter universe that exists alongside our universe.
Aha.
So and there's a lot of monsters in there. You get Annihilus and things like that, but there's also just decent folk who just live there. But they're antimatter, so when they come into contact with our universe, obviously either they destroy it or they come in because they have kind of magical protection to keep their antimatterness from destroying everything, and they just have superpowers. But I do think the Nor dimension is that antimatter universe. And this explains why the idea that you realize if you bring that universe in, it's going to destroy everything. And more importantly, it's not just going to destroy this world like we think it will. It'll also destroy that portion of the Nor dimension. Because when antimatter and matter connect,
the point was that they would do like General Zod wanted to do, to terraform our world to be more comfortable for their beings.
I mean, well, this is my fan theory.
Oh, okay.
So it's not official yet, but to me, that's the idea, and to me, that's sort of this idea that, you know, this urge to bring the Nor dimension in here, that's a bad idea.
Right. Maybe that's why they got banished, because it is the negative world, and if it does come into contact with us, it'll destroy everything.
It's going to destroy both worlds. Like, you know, a little bit of flitting between the worlds is okay.
If that's the case, then what is her motivation?
She doesn't know that. She just thinks, because for all we know, there's like cosmic beings that just exile people from their dimension all the time. And they don't give explanations, just like cosmic beings are wont to do. Never noticed, Mozz, cosmic beings don't like to explain themselves. They're very hoity and toity at the same time. And so in that moment, you get exiled. They're like, but I want to go home. It's like, no, you can't. Why? I said so. And it just becomes a Ryan George sketch all of a sudden. And in this moment, they want to go back home, And they don't even really know why they're not allowed to go back home. And I think that might even be why we don't get an explanation. We don't get an explanation of what they did to be exiled. We just know they're exiled.
I never got the sense that they didn't know. I felt like they just didn't want to share publicly what their sentence was for.
Well,
but I felt like they knew they were evil, or that they were selfish at the very least.
Or by that same token, maybe they weren't necessarily exiled; they just fell through a hole. And
that could be a story too.
And that becomes a situation because you don't want to explain to people, well, I can't, I want to go back to my home. Why aren't you in your home? It's like, well, I've been separated from my home.
Kind of a
Why
dummy.
were you separated? And you don't want to say, I don't know, man. I fell through a hole one day. You don't want to sound like an idiot. So you say, I was exiled. And so, but we're trying to earn our way back home. And, honestly, to me, the best thing in comics is whenever things are just a completely random, what? Like a spider bit you and that's why you got superpowers? Really? That random act is what pivoted the universe? And it's like, yeah, sometimes. Sometimes you just, aren't late for the science experiment and you're the one that gets bitten. And there's a dozen other universes where someone else got bitten by a spider, and those have very different outcomes. Because when it's not
on a micro level, the same thing is happening with people's DNAs. That's how these mutations occur in the Marvel universe as well.
I haven't heard the word mutation yet. Mozz.
No, I'm just saying in general.
I know, but if they come, if such a thing should ever occur,
right?
Although I will say, as an aspect of this, I do think there is an aspect of this that is about the reintroduction of the Inhumans through the concept of the Nor and possibly antimatter and Kree experiments. And hear me out here, because this was the big thing that everyone references, is when the exiled Nor try to return, they turn into this black carbon mess that decays and falls away. Similar to the way that if you were using one of the Terrigen diviners and you weren't an Inhuman, you would be covered in the black shell, it would fall away, and you would be dead. Whereas if you were an Inhuman, it would fall away and you would come through. So it's a possibility that the Kree did in fact contact the Nor dimension, the antimatter dimension of the Nor, and did in fact find a way to create this mutation in the humans. That the humans are the ones that could actually handle this Nor DNA to gain superpowers, but only when it was just right, when the mix was just right. And in order to find someone that could do it, you had to utilize these diviners that had a little bit of that antimatter in them, that if you weren't of the Nor, of the Inhumans, and you touched it, you would turn to the carbon. But if you were of the Nor, and you got exposed to that antimatter radiation, it would awaken something within you. And likewise, if you were something else entirely.
So if they went back to the Nor dimension now, they probably would go back with superpowers.
Well, yeah. I mean, that would be the idea. And there's also the other theory that when they actually get blasted and they die in that moment, that it's actually their bodies being shuffled off and they're going on to the Nor dimension as pure spirit energy. Or not.
Do they have corporeal selves there as well? Or are they souls in that dimension?
No, that's the thing. I mean, when you think about a jinn in general,
right? They're not. They don't have a.
Yeah, they're not corporeal, but at the same time, they seem to have some structure. You know that when Robert Williams does the muscle flex, he's got muscles. So
I've always felt like that was like them massaging your brain and releasing certain chemicals that help you understand what might be in front of you.
Yeah. Well, that's the Galactus Paradox, Galactus really maybe is just a big old cloud. But when humans see them, see Galactus, they see Galactus, as a human. Just as squirrels see him as a giant squirrel. And squirrels see him as a squirrel. Which is weird when you think about it, and especially when you think about it in the sense that not all species are, bipedal with two arms. That obviously if Galactus is appearing as what you are, he's going to appear differently to everyone, and so his actual form may not be a bipedal humanoid at all.
Yeah, every historical representation of Galactus with the things on the side, people have assumed that was a suit, but what if in real life that's just like a part of his biology or whatever that we don't know how? So we're like, oh no, that's gotta be
antlers. Right. It's not a hat. That's just what what he looks like, man. It's like,
that's interesting.
That's a theory. It's a theory, Phil. It's a theory.
Like ancient Native Americans thought spaceships and aliens were dragons and jaguar beings.
Yeah, really, they were just, gray rednecks and just doing a drive-by. Saying, show them your butt, man! Show them your butt! Ha ha!
Or the Kree got to the planet and thought the animals were the dominant species and then encountered the humans, and they're like, whoa, talking animals.
Yeah, well, who taught that parrot to talk? I don't know. They seem to be speaking. Yeah, well, that's all of ancient alien hypotheses in general. But anyway, so getting back to the story, I do like the love story between Kamala's grandmother and her grandfather.
Yeah, it was a little weird and a little strange. He meets like a random, I would suppose that's an evil spirit too, or like a witch meant to bewitch you, I'd be a little wary, but, or maybe she's like a vampire in that sense. She puts the glamour on him and he's like, Well,
okay, so I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm speaking about cultures that I am in no way related to. Okay. So let me filter this through Christian mythos, which is where I have my, Christians often don't believe in spirits and monsters. Not all Christians, but general Christians don't believe in that. It's expressly because, the one God, Allah, is above all these things. And if one were to try to tempt you, your faith in the one true God, Allah, would make it wither away and die. And so that's why vampires, get repelled when you say, here's a religious thing, go away, you stupid vampire. So it's entirely possible that he just thinks, oh, this is a woman that's in the middle, who is unmarried, quite frankly, objectively hot.
Right.
Also in the middle of partition. And, God only knows what she's had to deal with up until this point.
Right. And this is not a time where, a random woman can be seen floating around, ancient India without family with her. So it's a bit strange. And
well, no.
When I was growing up, my grandmother would tell me all sorts of stories about people meeting random women and they were always witches. And the way that you could tell they were witches, that their feet would be backwards, and the only way to ward them off was to flash them.
And to be fair, her feet were pointing in the right direction.
Right. True.
So there's a whole conversation about legs in this. So maybe that was their way of saying, hey, we know what you're thinking.
All right. Yeah.
He can see her feet. He knows that that's a human foot.
I guess.
And I guess but the idea to me is just, he is a man who knows this is a very bad time. And this is a woman who maybe was once something different, but right now she's on real hard times because she's sleeping under a tree in her fancy outfit. And it's like, and he's not the kind of guy that's like, yeah, sure, it's a random witch come to steal my soul. No, This is some lady. We're in the middle of really complex political times. I'm not going to be sitting here assuming, but what if the witches attack? And to be fair, he wouldn't be wrong in this universe to say, what if the witches attack?
Right.
But generally speaking, the witches don't attack as much as we are warned about witches attacking. And when he meets her, he sees this woman who's clearly in a rough spot. And he's just like, lady, if you want some food, I can get you some food. And it's no strings attached, man. I can see you're on hard times. And it even makes a point because he's obviously had a damaged leg. I don't know if it's a fake leg or it's just a really badly crippled leg. It's one or the other. And he's like, yeah, well, if you're gonna, because she says, I'll break your leg. So, well, if you're gonna break my leg, break this one. Because I never use it, which is, I think, it's that cute meat. They're trying to, in the middle of a genocide, they're trying to have a cute meat. And that's hard to write. I think they pulled it off.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
It's hard to meet cute in the middle of a genocide. Yet people do it. And it's weird when you hear historical stories because you talk to some old person who lived through it. It's like, yeah, and that's when I met my husband. And boy, what a sweetheart he was. And it's like, really? Really? That's where your mind was? Like, hey, I made it through today. And maybe I'll get to see tomorrow.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they do fall in love and they do have a kid and it's all this sweetness and love. And then, evil auntie shows up. And she's like, yeah, I thought we were going to go back to our home dimension with that one bracelet that we already said probably if you used it without the other one was going to destroy us all. It's like, yeah, I've been thinking about that. No. And she gets stabbed and it's sad and it's bad. But we do get the one picture of Kamala's grandmother, which comes back to the future later. And I like this, and I like the fact that she's
proving the grandmother right all along in her mom's eyes.
Of course, exactly. I mean, that is what I love about this is that it's that, and again, it's that flat circle of time. It's that idea that it all comes back, and everyone who said, oh, you're not Jinn, and oh, that's just all fairy tales. And again, here's what I'm going to say about all of this. At a certain point in the most recent in the last 20 years, if you had family history that you were a Jinn or a witch, and you're a young person and someone was telling you the stories of how your family were Jinns and witches, maybe you're like, hey man, is that actually true? Because I just saw friggin' Thor show up last week.
Yeah.
And they just moved into all of Nova Scotia. Or not Nova Scotia, Sweden or wherever that Tonsberg, Sweden. That's where they're at. That's where you can meet a bunch of real live Norse. They put on plays. It's really fun.
You can see gods amuse themselves.
You know what? And to be fair, and again, this is one of the things I'll say. This is a tie to the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We did meet one Norse god we met two Norse gods in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. One was Sif. The other one was the guy who was one of the heads of the partners on Ally McBeal, the little skinny guy, who was a professor. He's like, yeah, no, I'm a professor. And because that's all he's like, no, I really knew Norse Smith really well. So once people wanted to know what that was, I had a job and I could just stay behind and I could do this stuff because I was there. I could tell people about this stuff as myth because everyone wanted it. And then, Thor shows up one day and queers the whole deal. Now it's science, And you get this idea that there were a lot of Norse gods who were just, no, man, I was a stone cutter. I don't know, man. I built things for the gods. I worked there. Thor's just a friend from work, It's not that much. But anyway, So where was I? Where were we? Any of us? But anyway,
so the sister, she meets her there. The other witch, and they plan to say, "I'll give it back to you tomorrow." They end up at the train station where she gets stabbed, and she meets Kamala finally.
Yes.
And she knows sort of like, she's a special being, so she's like, "Oh, I knew I sent something out into the universe. Something helped me, and this is what I created."
Yeah.
I caused that time loop.
Exactly. And, I think that that's one of the things they're going to be touching on later. Oh, there's Tristan. He just got back from his grandparents' house. And he got like a hot dog and a Mountain Dew from 7-Eleven. Oh, gee, I got an extra hot dog for Ben. Okay, well, put it in the fridge. put it in the fridge. And anyway, moving right along.
And she ends up having to be the one. It was me, Trail of Stars.
Yeah, she makes a Trail of Star. She talks to the little kids like, look, man, I don't know, like, to make a star, but I'll do this. Look at this. This is stars. Let me lead you back to your grandfather. Which was nice that she did. And so they got together, and you can see the hurt in her grandfather's eyes when he's getting on the train and he knows the mom's not coming back. Because he sees the stars. He knows that something's happening.
Yeah. Because that's even got done finding out she was special.
I know. And that's even the thing. It's like, I didn't care. Why do you think that was a thing for me? It's like, it's like you said, you were a beautiful lady lying under a tree. Yeah, you know what? I knew something wasn't right. And quite frankly, whatever it was you were the son of a mob boss, the daughter of a mob boss who was going to have people come looking for you, or you were a freaking Jen. That is completely irrelevant to my story at this point.
Yeah.
Here you go, Tristan. Yes. I don't know if you can hear Tristan. He's saying, "Hi, Mozz. How are you?"
Tell him I said hello. Doing well. Hope he is too.
Mozz says hello. He hopes you're doing well. He's doing well as well. Okay, moving right along. Okay, the bow didn't harden.
I appreciated the grandmother's restraint to not immediately be like, "Ha ha! All these years, I told you, blah blah blah." I appreciated her restraint. To say, hey, why? Time to come together.
Because she knew the truth.
Yeah.
And she knew, she probably understood she'll be born out in time. It's like the truth wins out. And she knows Kamala's the same thing and probably knows, and this is like the real thing of this whole thing is like, everybody knows Kamala's Ms. Marvel.
Right.
This isn't news.
You're the light girl?
Yeah, what? Well, that's next week. But, they get back. We do get a nice end bit here with, of course, when Evilanti goes into the path, into the distortion zone, which is what that is usually called, which is the path between the negative zone and our universe. And actually, that is what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to be completely destroyed when you try to enter into the antimatter universe. And what allows you to pass through, Reed Richards did this, by the way. Oh, that idiot. He created what's called the distortion zone that would allow your atoms to sort of be recontextualized as antimatter atoms so they could enter into the universe. Reed Richards is very smart, as it turns out. And he built a door that he put in his universe. Oh, there's an antimatter. So look at that. There's an antimatter universe over there. How could I get there? Well, I guess I could just turn all of my atoms into antimatter atoms, and that would solve the problem right quick.
What about the theoretical particles that make up your personality? Would they experience a vast and diametric shift as well? Would you all of a sudden be Bizarro Dr. Reed over there? Would you be an evil Dr. Jekyll version of, or Mr. Hyde version of?
He either didn't consider it, and it didn't matter, or he did, and he solved it.
Fair enough, right? That's what you're supposed to assume, right?
Well, no, I mean that's the thing. Although people have pointed out, and this is like people who really get intense into the comics. It's like, well, it's interesting how there is like an evil Reed Richards. That Annihilus is the evil Reed Richards in the negative zone. That there is this.
So he already exists.
Yeah, there's an evil opposite in that place already, who is the super. And at this point. Annihilus was more a super scientist. In later incarnations, he's more like just a sentient locust. So it's interesting how it all plays out. In the moment,
I think it is this episode where they encounter the rip and she tries to go through it, and that's when Kamala's mom shows up and she goes, "Oh, you're the light girl?"
Yeah. And of course, but what happens is that when when Evil Auntie tries to close it, she wants to go through it. She feels she can, that her power should be strong enough to let her pass. And more importantly, to bring the Noor dimension into this dimension. Kamala makes the point, what about Cameron? And that is her one connection to this universe. And
so was Cameron born here, or
he was born here. He was born of her and was born here. So he is like Kamala's grandmother, a half Noor being.
Right.
So, which is why when she sends her power to him, he can utilize it, though not well. And that is the theme of what happens at the end when he gets his powers, goes to find Bruno, and
gets found.
And finds out his name is not Brian, which is, I think, kind of like, and I kind of like that about this episode, because he's like, I've been calling you Brian this whole time. I didn't know your name was Bruno. And he's like, I didn't even notice the first 4 or 5 times. Which is that's just classic Bruno. He's just like, I didn't want to make a fuss. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mozzie, I think that's about the end of the episode. Well, I mean, almost end of the episode, because obviously they send the Stark drones after them. And again, Kamran accidentally breaks a window when he's shot, when he's surprised by it, and then the drone fires freaking mortar shells into the Circle Q.
I guess they didn't want him alive.
Honestly, it's like, who arms a weapon like that? Oh, well, we're going into a populated area
for civilian use, right?
For civilian use that might have superpowers. Oh, this one has superpowers. It hasn't caused any real damage yet, like not majorly. But well, why don't we just blow up the whole building?
And I'm sure they have sort of non-destructive weapons that aren't like, kinetic projectiles. There's other ways to subdue people.
Part of me wonders if they do. I mean, we saw they had like the sonic devices,
right?
But it's really telling that the weapon's first choice is the thing that blows up the freaking Circle Q.
Yeah.
All right. Mozz. Let's wrap it up here, because we got another episode to talk about. But in this episode, you saw a lot, you talked about a lot, you experienced a lot. If people also would like to talk to you about that kind of stuff, how can they find you?
Oh, they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com, or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And likewise, you can always write to the whole Capes and Lunatics gang at CapesandLunatics, all spelled out, all one word, at gmail.com. That's CapesandLunatics at gmail.com. Write us a letter. We'll read it on air if you want us to. And likewise, you can call us at 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And leave us a voicemail. We love those, because we'll play those if you want us to. And if none of that appeals to you, but you still want awesome merch, like aluminum mugs or cool t-shirts, go to Linktree, linktr.ee/CapesandLunatics, where you can learn about all of our podcasts, all of our merch, and even, if you feel like it, subscribe to our Patreon, where you will hear us discuss things like which film was worse, Catwoman or Green Lantern with Ryan Reynolds. The debate continues. And meanwhile, if you'd like to write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the way our mothers and fathers once did, do so at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. Follow me on the Twitter as I live tweet things when I feel like it. I'm also on Reddit, but that is, if you want to follow me, it's at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEssser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle.
For quality. Ding.
Thank you, Mozz. All right, ladies and gentlemen. All right, you scurvy sapsuckers. You have come to the end of another episode of Full Stream Ahead. Join us next week as we once again learn about the Marvel Universe and other things. As we sail full stream ahead. I gotta stop saying full stream ahead before that's the end note. What am I doing anymore? Yarg. There we go. That's our end. Yarg.